Everyone, and welcome to the first virtual offering of the Redevelopment Training Institute post the COVID-19 pandemic. We are excited to have you here. I want to pause for 1 second and just share with you the change in the name of the Redevelopment Training Institute. Pre-pandemic, we focused the majority of our offerings on real estate development. We focused on redevelopment, but the pandemic caused the NJRA to shift and to better understand how we could position ourselves to support small businesses throughout the state of New Jersey. Thus, the change to the Training Institute. The pandemic caused all of us to stop in place, to shelter inside, to mask up, to wash our hands, and quite frankly, to be a little fearful. But as New Jersey recovers, we think it's important for the Training Institute to come forward with an offering to provide direction, to provide information, and to provide support that we have been doing since 2006. I'm excited today for the New Jersey Recovers workshop to have joined me our Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Y. Oliver, who serves as the Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs, the Chairman of the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority, and also the Chair of the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency. I equally am proud to serve in this space with my colleagues, Melanie Walter, the newly appointed Executive Director of the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency, and my amazing colleague, Tim Sullivan, who's not new at this position, but since his appointment as CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, has worked closely with me to ensure that all communities in the state of New Jersey get access to critical resources so that everyone can improve their quality of life.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this important webinar discussion today that will cover critical information about economic recovery programs available from the state of New Jersey. We're pleased to have the captive attention today of influential developers, redevelopment personnel, attorneys, planners, elected officials, entrepreneurs, consultants, licensed practitioners, and local government professionals in New Jersey, and we welcome you to this training. I want to commend the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority and CEO Leslie Anderson for holding this conversation. These webinars help to inform our valued partners and keep New Jersey on the map as a national leader in rebuilding and rebooting our economy post-COVID. In January, Governor Murphy signed a sweeping incentives package known as the Economic Recovery Act, which was designed to help strengthen our economy and help address some of the long-standing equity issues faced by the most distressed communities in our state. The ERA created a package of tax incentive financing and grant programs to address the ongoing economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic while building a stronger and fairer New Jersey economy. The crisis has impacted our state on so many levels, but we are especially concerned with what it is doing to our local economies and main streets that were already struggling. The Main Street Recovery Finance Program that was included in the package will provide one-time grants, loans, loan guarantees, and technical assistance to small and micro businesses and community development financial institutions. These incentives will work in tandem with our existing Main Street focused programs that the state offers to assist small business owners. Another aspect of the ERA that aids our communities is the historic property tax credit. When paired with federal tax credits, this incentive provides substantial assistance with project costs related to rehabilitating historic properties. It is a permanent program that will work in tandem with the broad-reaching efforts of the Department of Community Affairs affiliate agency, the New Jersey Historic Trust. Another pressing issue we face in New Jersey is brownfields, which place a tremendous economic, environmental, and public health burden, especially on our communities of color. The Brownfields Redevelopment Incentive Program, established through the ERA, will help clean up contaminated sites, especially those in New Jersey's most polluted urban areas, to bring them back to their full potential usage. Revitalizing these sites is not only good for the economy, but it is helping clean up decades of misuse and abuse in our most disadvantaged neighborhoods. The issue of development and redevelopment efforts must continue to be at the forefront of our conversations if we are to maintain our standing as an economic leader in the global economy post-COVID-19. The NJRA has asked me to specifically address some of the programs that the Department of Community Affairs handles administering in response to this pandemic. Most of you are aware that in addition to my role as Lieutenant Governor, I also serve as DCA Commissioner. Our department is proud to serve an integral role in recovery efforts across the board, but especially with regard to helping people access and keep affordable housing. There are two programs that I want to touch on today. The first of which is DCA's COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Many of you are familiar with our Section 8 program that assists tenants who cannot afford their rent. The COVID Rental Assistance Program is designed to do the same thing, but was specifically created to help New Jersey residents who are financially impacted by the pandemic pay their rent and rental arrears. The program, which was initially launched last summer, provides up to 12 months of rental assistance to low and moderate income households that have had a substantial reduction in income, incurred significant costs, or experienced financial hardships due directly or indirectly to the pandemic. In the first phase of the program, more than 15,000 households were assisted. And in March, we announced a second phase after having received a substantial amount of additional funding from the Federal American Rescue Plan to assist residents who have been economically impacted by COVID-19. Another thing I want to make sure that this audience hears and understands is that property owners and landlords who have tenants that are behind on their rent may apply for rental assistance on behalf of the tenant, but with the tenant's permission. This is very important because we have many landlords throughout the state who have felt the deep financial impacts of this crisis due to the fact that their tenants cannot pay their rent. My message to renters and landlords alike who are struggling because of the pandemic is to apply for COVID-19 Emergency Rental Assistance Program, even if they are not sure if they qualify. The amount that households will receive depends on their rental amount, location, and income level. To find more details about the program, please visit our website at nj.gov/DCA. I also want to briefly touch on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and its intended purpose. The fund, which was restored as part of Governor Murphy's fiscal year 2020 budget and is administered by DCA, allows for the development of different types of affordable housing projects to support stronger, fairer, and more affordable communities in New Jersey. In December of 2020, DCA announced the award of $19 million to housing organizations throughout the state through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to help build up our housing stock. The trust fund is provided as gap funding to developers, so the amount of subsidy is specific to each project's financial needs. Developers can access the fund for scattered site development across multiple neighborhoods, but not across municipal boundaries. And while the AHTF is used for capital expenses and construction costs and not down payment assistance, Melanie Walter from the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency will explain how the agency offers a down payment assistance program to help new home buyers purchase a home. I'm excited to share all of this great information with you, but now it's time for me to turn the program over to some of our other panelists who will tell you about programs that they offer. I'm pleased to introduce Melanie Walter, who serves as Executive Director of the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency.
Good morning. My name is Melanie Walter. I'm the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency Executive Director. It's a pleasure to be here today to join our Lieutenant Governor, Sheila Oliver, our host for this morning's session, Leslie Anderson, head of the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority, and Tim Sullivan of the EDA. And we have the opportunity today to share some important information about redevelopment programs, housing opportunities, and the way that we're helping to recover New Jersey from the COVID pandemic. The first of the programs that NJHMFA is deeply involved in, and that really is of relevance to the session today, is the 9% low-income housing tax credit program administered through our agency. This federal low-income housing tax credit program has proven the most successful federal housing program in history. The credit provides investors a dollar-for-dollar reduction in federal tax liability. In doing so, it catalyzes affordable development by attracting private investment into the historically underserved affordable housing market. The additional capital that this program provides through this mechanism helps to mitigate the debt burden incurred in the construction and rehabilitation development process. Consequently, you need less rental income to provide for the operations at each development. This matters because rent in our market and in markets across the country is incredibly high. Market rent is much too high for many Americans and many New Jerseyans to afford. Affordable housing, therefore, has to come in a lot of different forms. Generally speaking, it's defined as either 50, 60, or 80% of county median income once we adjust for family size. Oversight of the program is handled by each state under the auspices of the Internal Revenue Service. So New Jersey has the opportunity to administer its affordable housing programs for all qualifying properties. Compliance with the program is strictly enforced, so people undertaking an affordable housing development need to be aware that the regulatory burden is not insignificant, but it's not insurmountable either. And that's where NJHMFA partners closely with our development community and new entrants into our space to make sure that they're able to comply and move forward under a qualified allocation plan. That qualified allocation plan is really one of the most effective features of the LIHTC program. Each state gets the ability to craft what it's looking for in affordable housing. So what we get to do is define criteria for awarding tax credits. Our 2020 qualified allocation plan, which governed the award of LIHTC credits last year, allowed us to promote mixed income development, encourage development in the governor's designated opportunity zones, and encourage owners to provide supportive senior services to allow residents to age in place and to enhance their quality of life. We've also managed to have a qualified allocation plan that promotes substantial green construction, helping to improve energy efficiency for tenants and improve our environment. Each year, we have the ability to reshape that qualified allocation plan so we can target our development to our development needs, making sure that we're reaching the communities and the groups of our population that are most in need in certain areas. LIHTC is a very big program, but it could be bigger. New Jersey is one of the only states in the nation that uses all of its tax credit and volume cap capacity each year, and we're still oversubscribed each and every year. That means that we have more perfect applications coming in than we can award credits. It makes it a very competitive environment for entrants into the space, applicants for the program, but it also means that we get a very high quality of applications, so we see very high quality development for our residents. We would love to see the expansion of tax credit capacity to meet our need. Over the last 3 years, each state did receive a temporary increase of about $2.70 per capita in terms of credit capacity. That helped us to build a great many more units, several thousand more units than in a typical year. We'd love to see a permanent expansion. In 2020 alone, NJHMFA was able to award over $27 million in annual federal LIHTC credits. This opened the door to over 1,300 new apartments for families, seniors, and residents with special needs. The highly competitive tax credits are expected to generate about $254 million in private investment into housing. That's how we bring the rent down. That allows us to create 21 developments that were valued at over $550 million in new development. That's how you build a stronger and fairer New Jersey. Understanding the need to provide more of this kind of housing, Governor Murphy's fiscal year 2022 budget allocated $22 million specifically to gap financing to help make several of our perfect scoring projects for which we don't have 9% LIHTC credits available possible nonetheless. Gap financing advances the state's constitutional obligation to provide quality, affordable housing because it's increasing our capacity to take on new projects. Within that context, I'll walk you through now a little bit more about the structure of the multifamily program that gets us to that outcome. The agency revenue bond financing program provides construction loans and permanent loans through the sale of tax-exempt or taxable mortgage revenue bonds. For new construction and the preservation of existing multifamily rental housing units. Our sponsors can also apply for supplemental financing in certain areas, things like special needs housing. We now have a $20 million commitment in this year's budget to provide additional supportive housing, financing, and special needs housing dollars every year going forward, which will really increase our capacity to assist particularly in need populations. When someone comes in to apply to do a project with us, they may apply for bond financing at any time. They just submit what we call our UNI app, which is the Unified Application for Multifamily Housing Programs. That comes in directly to our Multifamily Supportive Housing Division. This, though, has to be done in compliance with our annual application cycle, so an applicant has to be mindful of the deadlines for the 9% credit rounds. This year, our 9% LIHTC application for the family, senior, and supportive housing cycles is August 31st, 2021. The mixed income reserve application, which is a separate category, moves on a rolling basis. That application is currently open, and it remains open also through August 31st, 2021. That is a rolling cycle. All of the information about those programs is available on our website. So there's a lot of detail available at njhousing.gov/developer. If you're looking at participating in one of our programs or applying to construct a project, that's a great place to start. The UNI app may also be downloaded from that page, and it supports all of those different programs. So it's a way to one-stop shop for your application materials. As you look at an application, each project has to advance certain affordable housing requirements. Projects that are seeking tax-exempt bond financing are subject to restrictions under the Internal Revenue Code. That requires that either a minimum of 20% of the units are occupied by persons earning 50% or less of AMI, area median income, or a minimum of 40% have to be occupied by persons earning 60% or less of that area median income. Again, we're providing subsidies so that those rents can be lowered. And so there's a threshold at which there's a number of affordable units that have to be provided for the amount of subsidy put into the deal. Income averaging requires that 40% of the units in a housing project should average about 60% of median income. And that calculation is fairly strict. So it's an important part of the certification process, even once you've constructed the property, to make sure that you're compliant with those tax credit obligations. Now, developers should bear in mind that a housing proposal has to meet all of our standards for site control, neighborhood location, the accessibility of services, marketability, design, and construction. The proposal has to be financially feasible, and it needs to comply with applicable state, local, and federal requirements. The primary determinant in terms of eligibility for our financing is that it also has a rental cost, which is going to be financially feasible and consistent with those documented low and moderate income needs. Our underwriting and financing guidelines are available at the previously mentioned website, but the criteria are going to include the eligibility for the sponsor and the property, and then financing options and required documentation. Now, one question that we do get a lot, and I know NJRA had inquired about this as we were preparing for this session, is whether you're required to have an NJHMFA tax abatement to participate in this process. You're not. A developer, though, could also be obtaining a municipal resolution, granting a real estate tax abatement, or authorizing an agreement for payments in lieu of taxes, and that could be coterminous with our HMFA mortgage term. But I would also note that in general, we find that a project without a tax abatement or a project that has a tax abatement under the long-term tax exemption statute can have trouble demonstrating financial feasibility without having access to the HMFA tax exemption. There's usually just a larger gap to deal with. Moreover, the lack of a tax abatement under our statute could increase the financial risk associated with your deal for our agency. So getting it onto solid footing sufficient to move past underwriting may require additional security, which means you could be taking on an increased debt service. You could have additional coverage, or you may have to escrow additional funds to make sure that you are able to meet those thresholds. Those are really the critical points about the 9% program. From here, I would suggest that we turn to the 4% LIHTC program, which I believe should be on our next slide. Yeah. In addition to that previously mentioned highly competitive 9% round, we are also able to provide tax-exempt bond financing that actually creates an as-of-right or automatic 4% credit for multifamily rental housing developments. 4% credits are a non-competitive process. They're generated when a project finances at least 50% of construction costs using tax-exempt private activity bonds. So these 4% credits can be generated in conjunction with tax-exempt bond financing under 26 U.S.C. subsection 142. There are a number of ways that you can qualify. In 2020, we saw, again, a tremendous amount of construction using 4% credits. The total amount of LIHTC equity for the 4% projects exceeded $76 million. So we created 402 new units and rehabilitated 651 existing units. When you think about affordable housing, you don't just want to think about new construction. There are a lot of properties out there that are in need of rehab that could either remain affordable or become affordable using the tax credit process. Also, as you hear more about the new ERA's Aspire program from EDA later on in this session, please remember that these 4% credits are very likely to be a key component of any Aspire project that includes at least 20% affordable housing. So pairing those two programs creates a tremendous opportunity to leverage government resources and private resources to create housing that's walkable, accessible, in desirable areas. I mean, everything that you could be hoping for in a live-work-play scenario, we can provide affordably through the Aspire program. It's pretty exciting. I've been asked to also introduce you to a few concepts surrounding our multifamily conduit bond program. So I'd ask that we turn to the next slide. Thank you. The conduit bond program is a little bit different than the things that we've talked about before because it's not dealing with those same credit components. Or the same application process, really. We serve as a conduit issuer for tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds for qualified creditworthy borrowers that are undertaking any project that's in furtherance of our mission. Our mission is to provide safe, decent, and affordable housing for all New Jersey residents. A conduit issue means that we're issuing securities to finance a project that's going to be essentially using those revenues as a third party. The security for those obligations, though, is the credit of the conduit borrower or the pledged revenues from the project finance. It's not the credit of the HMFA, which makes it a little bit different than what you see with those other products that we talked about. Effectively, we're helping to access the market, package a number of projects together, and improve creditworthiness through that process. This kind of issuance does come with some restrictions, though, beyond just that notion of advancing a qualifying affordable housing purpose. So when you're looking at participating in a conduit issuance, you need to think about your return. There are caps on the maximum amount of return possible. Owners may receive a return on investment at up to an annual rate of 12%. There are also going to be requirements associated with appraisal and credit enhancement that come along with doing a conduit issuance with the HMFA, particularly in the affordable housing context. When you're issuing conduit debt through HMFA, a sponsor has to determine whether to proceed via direct purchase, private placement, or private offering. That's who's really going to be buying that debt. In a public offering, bonds are going to be purchased by an underwriter, and they're sold to investors in the public market. They can be structured with either third-party credit enhancement using a 100% cash collateral structure or using a 100% collateralized structure. In a collateralized structure, the conduit borrower is depositing a security guaranteed by the United States with the bond trustee. So that's your collateral, and that's done at or prior to bond closing. So depending on the type of transaction, you have different kind of surety and collateral obligations to think about. Direct purchase transactions are typically deals where a bank or a financial institution is directly purchasing the conduit bonds and then either lending the funds for or purchasing the conduit loan. Although you have the ability as the borrower to make the decision to pursue public or non-public deals, you're also going to have a lot of other players in that negotiation and that development process who are going to weigh in on the best way to proceed. The decision's often influenced by your full financing plan. It may include questions about whether part of your deal is financed by our agency or another government entity, the type of the deal, which structures are going to yield the lowest overall cost of funds, and then other credit and factors that are considered by financial institutions as they're evaluating and pricing your financing. That can change depending upon the market, upon the conditions of your deal. So it's very difficult to give a clear direction. I know we were asked as to whether there was a preferable way. It's going to be very much a case-by-case basis. And so working with your partners in the financial industry, at the agency, and with anyone else engaged in the development is going to be the best way to navigate that process. Certainly, we're happy to assist to the extent that we can. The agency does finance using multiple structures. And we're frequently aware of borrowers and developers who are looking at multiple different options for the same project with multiple financial institutions. As you shop around, you find out what your best opportunity is, and that's what you do. So I know that's a fair bit to cover and relatively quickly, but I hope that gives you a quick overview of the concept, the process, and the key components that are involved in each of HMFA's primary multifamily financing programs. I want to thank the NJRA again for bringing this group together. It's great to have the opportunity to support this educational mission today. We love to see new developers, new financial institutions coming into the affordable housing space and excited about helping to produce quality affordable housing in New Jersey. We are thrilled, especially now, because it's such a crucial component of our shared recovery from the pandemic, and we have a lot of work to do. We look forward to doing it with all of you.
Please allow me to introduce Leslie Anderson, who serves as President and CEO of the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Oliver, for that wonderful introduction. We are the New Jersey Redevelopment Authority. As mentioned earlier, I am Leslie Anderson, the President and CEO, and it is a pleasure to work under the leadership of Governor Phil Murphy, who provides direction and insight for how all of our agencies can work collaboratively together to support economic growth in the state of New Jersey. And as I mentioned earlier, we are chaired by the amazing Sheila Y. Oliver. I just want to, for those of you who are new to this workshop and new to the work of the Redevelopment Authority, this is actually our 25th year. We were established in 1996, but became fully operational in 1997 as a comprehensive resource center that focuses primarily on the most urbanized communities in the state of New Jersey. If you visit our website, you will gain a great deal of insight into our 68 eligible communities and what communities are eligible to receive financial resources from the Redevelopment Authority. Our training institute, however, is open to all 500 plus municipalities in the state of New Jersey. We're there first is our tagline, and it's almost a mantra for us. The NJRA, because of the areas and the neighborhoods we work in, we're there first. We take that initial risk to track that other development. And there's just a few highlights I want to talk about in our impact. Thus far, we have approved $418 million in direct investments, which has leveraged $3.8 billion in total investments. What's exciting about this is that for every alternate source for NJRA financing, it's a 1-to-9 ratio. So for every NJRA dollar, we create 9 in other resources that can come to the table. The other pieces are just as important, but I believe that we all come from B+ minds and we can read what's happening. The NJRA works with 3 investment tools. 2 investment tools I'm going to focus on today, but I thought it was important to mention our bond financing. We can issue both taxable and tax-exempt bonds to support projects in urban areas. The picture you see here is Newark Collegiate Academy, which is in the city of Newark. It is a KIPP school. We were helpful, and helpful is the understatement, but our financing supported the construction of Newark Collegiate Academy. But listed here in the bullets are how these resources can be used through bond financing. And it's an excellent tool and resource if you're looking to undertake real estate development in urban areas. One of our sweet spots is the New Jersey Urban Site Acquisition Program. The FY22 budget included $10 million in support of the Urban Site Acquisition Program. What's exciting about this is that the NJRA had not seen an investment from the state budget since 2003. So we thank the Murphy administration for understanding and realizing the work of the NJRA and how important it is to get resources into some of our most distressed communities. So this new funding is going to help the Redevelopment Authority approve more projects utilizing the Urban Site Acquisition Program. It functions as a revolving loan fund. We provide through this program upfront short-term capital. And what's exciting about this program is that it assumes that initial risk to jumpstart redevelopment projects. It is in the project first. It allows the developer looking at a real estate development project to acquire the land, to begin to assemble all of the properties that are necessary in order to make a project work. When we created this program, we were working in somewhat of a chicken and an egg situation. The developer couldn't secure their permanent and construction financing until they could demonstrate site control, but they couldn't demonstrate site control without a critical resource like the New Jersey Urban Site Acquisition Program. This program allows a developer in one of our eligible communities to begin site assemblage and then to begin to work on identifying their permanent and their construction financing. The general term for this loan is about 36 months. And what we do is the NJRA takes a first lien position on the property or the properties to be included in the project. We look to be taken out by the construction source of financing for the project once it's secured and has been approved. However, there are projects where the NJRA has subordinated its position and remained in the project if that's what's necessary in order for the project to work. Because this loan is secured by the properties, the loan amount cannot be greater than the approved value of the property. So in other words, the appraised value has to be either greater than or equal to the amount of the loan. But you can access these funds when you're looking to secure your financing. And what I just want to talk to you about is a very exciting project we were able to undertake in Jersey City for an organization you may be familiar with called Rising Tide Capital. What's interesting about this project, and I think it's going to back us into how the Redevelopment Authority works to undertake and structure financing for a project. This particular site was in foreclosure. It started out as development with about 20,000 square feet of commercial space on the ground level, some commercial space on the top floor, and 10 units of affordable housing. The developer, unfortunately, the initial developer ran out of money, was not able to complete the project, and the project was in foreclosure. We partnered with the Jersey City Redevelopment Agency. They brought this project to us. The developer was asking for $1.5 million to clear the debt that he had incurred on the property and was going to allow Rising Tide Capital to step in, finish out the retrofitting of the property, and allow the project to move forward. What I want to say about this is that if we had predefined terms of how all of our programs work, this project would not have worked because of the situation with the bankruptcy, with the situation with the pending foreclosure. We needed the flexibility to insert and improve the USA loan to allow the project to move forward without a significant amount of transition with the site as it was presented. What we like to pride ourselves on at the Redevelopment Authority is that we allow the developer to fit his or her project to our financing, as opposed to telling the developer, you have to fit into what we conceive to be how financing should work for projects. And this project with Rising Tide Capital is a shining example of how the NJRA met the needs of this critical nonprofit in Jersey City, but also helped to save what started out as a blighted building, becoming blighted again because the developer was in foreclosure. Next up is our Redevelopment Investment Fund. What's exciting here is this was another $10 million investment included in the FY22 budget. The Redevelopment Investment Fund is one of the most flexible resources that the NJRA has at its disposal. With this project, we can do term loans, we can support real estate development, and we can also do loan guarantees. And it's very, very, very exciting. What type of development projects would best fit or qualify for the Redevelopment Investment Fund? I don't want to be cavalier about it, but it depends. It's driven by what the need is in the community. If you have a project, we have our contact information at the end of this presentation where you can contact us and begin to talk about your project. And then we can look at how our resources will best fit into the project. The Redevelopment Investment Fund primarily functions as subordinated debt. Unlike the USA program, we're normally with the Redevelopment Investment Fund part of the capital stack, and we're not necessarily in first. So we can play a subordinated role and a subordinated position. And again, we talk to you about how to deploy the funds once the loans are approved and what's the exit strategy and what our payment resource is. These are normally longer term financing. Unlike USA, these do extend out beyond the 36 months. So this is definitely a negotiated item for you all coming to the NJRA to access these resources. So it's important to come in and talk to us. And the role that we fit in the project is dependent on the role that the project needs us to fit. And again, I don't want to seem cavalier, but after 25 years of reviewing projects, of reviewing capital stacks, the one thing that I'm certain about, and I know for sure, is that as soon as I define the role we're going to play, we lose the flexibility to develop a project that meets the need of the community. And that's critical for the communities that we serve. It's critical for the developers that look to connect and work with the NJRA, that we maintain our flexibility to connect in and to work with them. Which leads me to this phenomenal project in Irvington, DeLaurice Catering and Banquet Hall. It is a very small loan amount when you look at it, only $220,000 for a $1.74 million project. For every $1 that the NJRA put into this project, there were $12 generated in alternate resources. Irvington was in need of a mid-sized banquet facility that also serves Essex and surrounding counties. There is a 280 capacity facility for wedding receptions, birthdays, fundraising events, and there's also an 80-seat restaurant. This property was converted from a dilapidated closed daycare center and transformed into this affordable banquet facility. And I want to say that our ability to work with the owners of this particular facility in transforming it was the flexibility to step into a project that was already under construction, to work with the other financiers that were at the table to come up with blended rates and opportunities to secure the collateral. And that's what allowed this project to move forward. So again, by not prescribing, by not being too upfront in what hoops individuals have to jump through to access our financing, but serving more as a partner at the table with either the developer or the business owner is what gets us across the finish line to success. Lastly, I just want to share with you how you get in contact with us. My email address is here, along with Darryl Godfrey, who's our Chief Operating Officer, and Janelle Johnson Baker. This is probably the first time that we'll be unveiling it. She has joined the NJRA team as Vice President of Business Development and Investments. And I'm going to leave this up for just a minute for those of you that are taking pictures and you want to screenshot it. This is how you get in touch with us. The earlier you invite us to your project, the better. We don't want to necessarily be the gap filler for your financing. We'd like to be at the table at the outset of the discussion and to be supportive of you as you look to move your project forward. I want to thank each of you for taking the time to hear about our presentation today. We're excited to connect with you directly and to learn more about your project. So thank you.
And finally, please allow me to introduce Tim Sullivan, who serves as CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tim Sullivan. I'm the CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Honored to be here as part of the Murphy administration to talk to you a little bit about the Economic Recovery Act of 2020, which Governor Murphy signed into law earlier this year in 2021, and which was actually just amended and improved already in late June of 2021 via what was known as a cleanup bill. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out and express my appreciation for Leslie Anderson, my dear friend and colleague and partner, for everything her and her team at NJRA do for our state, for our communities, with webinars and partnerships like this, with most importantly the programs that they run and oversee, which have such a huge impact on our state. I also want to express my appreciation to the great Lieutenant Governor of this great state, Sheila Oliver, who's been such a champion and a leader, not just through this crisis, of course, so strongly prior to the crisis, but particularly during these last 16 or 18 months of COVID, just been such a tireless leader on so many different fronts. And we all draw inspiration from her work and from the work of Governor Murphy to lead when they're leading the charge about everything we do every day. I also want to say, express my appreciation for Melanie Walter, who's such a great colleague as well. Her team at HMFA and our team at NJEDA work closely on so many different projects. We collaborate on so many different policy areas that it's been great to have her leadership at HMFA for the last several months here. What I've been asked to do is give you a kind of an overview of the Economic Recovery Act, sometimes known as the Incentives Bill. I would encourage you to think about it as much broader than incentives. It's really about investing in communities, investing in our main streets, investing in our downtowns. Yes, it uses tax credits and tax incentives to do so, but it's really about a programmatic, policy-based approach that is completely consistent with Governor Murphy and Lieutenant Governor Oliver's comprehensive approach to supporting a stronger and fairer New Jersey economy, using incentives and tax credits and grants and loans as tools in service of that strategy to accomplish that stronger and fairer New Jersey. So as I mentioned, this is the Economic Recovery Act of 2020. Really, it's rooted in and grounded in, as I mentioned, way back in October of 2018, Governor Murphy released his comprehensive economic development strategy, which was not just an EDA strategy, but really a whole of government approach to building a stronger and fairer New Jersey economy. And those 4 principles and priorities endure through the pandemic and on through the recovery and into hopefully the future. As we think about making significant investments in people, things like apprenticeship and investments in higher ed, investments in free community college, expanded support for higher ed generally, investing in our communities. Again, lots of that work is done by others than EDA, but investing in our cities and towns, building world-class, vibrant, inclusive cities and towns, investing in our infrastructure, investing in our innovation capability to regain our leadership position in innovation, and making government work better, particularly to support small business and the small business climate. As we thought about, as the governor approached how to reform and bring about new programs to support economic development, we really wanted to focus on a handful of principles. One, supporting job creation, of course, investing in innovation, as I mentioned, really providing significant relief and support for Main Street that took on an even stronger focus and a sharper focus during COVID, which has been such a challenging period for small businesses and Main Streets across our state. Helping support underserved communities. Again, this has taken on new urgency and new clarity, particularly since 2020 and everything we've seen in terms of calls for stronger calls and more clearer calls for equity and inclusion in everything that we do, and economic justice in everything that we do. And then also importantly, putting the right oversight reforms and anti-corruption measures to make sure that the programs that are designed help who they're supposed to help and are deployed the way they're supposed to be deployed. And that's something we take incredibly seriously. There's been a number of measures included in these programs that I won't go through in great detail, but that are really focused on how do we build not just a stronger economy, but a fairer economy. That includes things like oversight from a new inspector general, putting caps on our programs, making sure that the tax credit sale process has been reformed. Also including things that are progressive, progressive pro-growth goals, like strengthen our prevailing wage requirements, that we're creating good family-sustaining jobs at every dimension of these projects, and also requiring community benefit agreements. We're the first state in the union that we're aware of, at least, to require community benefit agreements in nearly every project that we're involved in. So what are the programs under the Recovery Act to support these programs? There's 8 really kind of core new programs that are in the bill. I won't go through them all because not all of them necessarily are germane to what we're talking about today. But Emerge is sort of the successor to Grow, a job creation and attraction and retention tool. Aspire, which I will talk about, sort of a successor to ERG. The Food Desert Relief Program, the Innovation Evergreen Fund, a game changer for our innovation economy. Won't go through that in great detail today. Main Street, obviously incredibly important. A Brownfield Redevelopment Initiative, an historic preservation tax credit, and then the Community Anchor Development Program. So I'll just tick through some of these quickly over the next few minutes here. The Aspire program, really excited about this. Again, this is a gap financing tool to invest in primarily mixed-use development, affordable housing, and mixed income housing, supporting areas that are supported by transit, supporting underserved communities. These are incredibly impactful potential investments, supporting up to 60% of development costs for residential projects that include affordable housing, or between 45 and 50% for other types of mixed-use projects. The awards can be up to $60 million per project in targeted areas and $42 million in other areas. Again, really targeting transit, really targeting affordable mixed income, targeting mixed rate in areas, mixed income housing, where it's appropriate, targeting market rate in places where that's needed. It includes labor peace agreements everywhere, and it's capped at $1.1 billion per year. We expect to launch this program in the fall and start taking applications this fall, which we're super excited about because there's a lot of demand for this kind of development right now. The Food Desert Relief Program is another kind of real estate tool to achieve a policy goal that is longstanding, which is to support and alleviate food deserts. Far too many in a state like ours. It's unacceptable, the number of places and people, communities that really have no access to fresh, healthy food or limited access to fresh and healthy food. This will support the development of new grocery stores in food desert communities with up to 40% of development costs supported via tax credits, as well as operating support as well. So not just getting them built, but getting them supported, because we know there's market reasons why food deserts exist in many cases. There's lots of reasons that contribute to it, but one of them is just the economics of supporting grocery stores in places that need them with the right operating support and the right development support. We also importantly don't just want to create new grocery stores. Some places have some grocery stores that are not providing all the food you want or the types of food you want. Sometimes it's about expanding existing small and mid-sized retailers to support more food security initiatives. There will be grants and loans available under this program as well. Main Street, there's $100 million, significant, the largest small business direct appropriation of state resources in a very long time, which will support grants and loans to small businesses and micro businesses. This program will also launch kind of late summer, early fall. 40% of the funds are reserved for businesses in Opportunity Zone eligible census tracts. So again, we really want to target this to particularly, minority and women-owned businesses that have struggled and been hit so hard by this pandemic, and frankly had enormous challenges accessing capital on an equitable basis prior to this pandemic. Importantly, too, we're going to have some really potent tools for technical assistance for micro businesses under this program that, again, we expect to launch sort of in the September, October timeframe. Because, again, we really want to have a comprehensive approach to small business. If this pandemic didn't teach you about the importance and the vulnerability and the fragility of some of our small business communities, I don't know what will. And so this is a really important tool to support our main streets and our downtowns all across the state. Brownfield's longstanding initiative and something that Governor Murphy and Lieutenant Governor Oliver have been focused on from day one, something that we work in really close partnership with DEP, with the new Commissioner Sean Lanzarette, and with his predecessor, Catherine McCabe as well. A $50 million annual program, project cap of up to $8 million to support really everything kind of soup to nuts from remediation. This will be a competitive application process that will support funds for assessment, investigation, remediation, and importantly, it also includes hazardous building materials, not just contamination in the soil, which is incredibly important. But if you're talking about preserving and redeveloping structures, or even just abating and demolishing them because they need to go, hazardous building materials are a big part of the equation and a big part of the arithmetic that can be a barrier to those redevelopments. So this is a comprehensive brownfield tool that I think is a huge step forward for the state. It's got a companion program, and I mentioned preserving historic structures. New Jersey was, for whatever reason, one of 11 states that did not have a state-level historic tax credit program. I don't know why. Now we do. It's also $50 million per year, can do up to 40% of the rehab costs, up to $8 million per project. These are for buildings that are on the National Register or approved by the State Historic Preservation Officer. It's limited to income-producing projects. So we're talking about multifamily, mixed-use, commercial, industrial, retail. We're not doing single-family homes. We're not doing standalone residential projects. That's a valid and great policy goal, just not served by this tool. This again will have a competitive application process, and really, if you think about from a strategy perspective and from a policy perspective, some of our great cities and our distressed communities, the bones of these cities. You think about Trenton, you think about places like Patterson, Camden, have great, and lots of places in between, great historic buildings that are ready and primed for a next life as a new different kind of use, whether that's an industrial conversion to housing or back into kind of modern innovation space. Great redevelopment opportunities that need a state level historic tax credit to partner with the federal historic tax credit that so many states have done all across this country. New Jersey really has underperformed in the amount of historic preservation and redevelopment that we've done. We think this is a great opportunity. This is an area where we will, and so like so many other areas, be working in great partnership with the Lieutenant Governor and her team at DCA, with DEP, with the Department of State, and all the folks who are great advocates and champions for historic preservation. This is a big financial tool to bring to the table to support those programs. Finally, last program I'll mention community anchor development program. This is another real estate tool, that really leverages our anchor institutions, whether that's colleges and universities, whether that's hospitals, arts and culture institutions, science museums, those kinds of organizations that have, in many cases, a significant amount of land that they could and wish to redevelop, or wish to expand and wish to grow their footprint. These are great opportunities to expand those facilities. Anchor institutions are great. They employ a lot of people. They pay a lot of wages. They tend to buy a lot of things locally. They tend to hire a lot locally. We really want to focus on those kinds of ambitions. And so this is a different kind of tax credit. Instead of being a sort of like ERG and Aspire, a tax credit that is sort of an annual tax credit that can be renewed and transferred and sold. This is where the state will essentially be an equity partner in these transactions. Again, the rules in this are still being written and the details are being fine-tuned, but this is potentially a large caliber tool to bring to the table. Support up to $75 million of direct investment or up to 40% of project costs, where we can have job creating economic development tools with anchors, development projects with anchor institutions that also focus on career training and work opportunities, workforce development, and local hiring, local purchasing. These are great opportunities to do that. There are a number of other programs that are touched upon in the Economic Development, the Economic Recovery Act that are worth mentioning briefly. We did extend, the governor and the legislature extended the ERG program, so that's active right now for both commercial and residential, for projects that are ready to go right now and can't wait for Aspire and Emerge. We made some changes to Grow. We made some changes to some of the innovation tools, like the Angel Investor Tax Credit, to expand that credit. The net operating loss program was expanded as well, because those are significant opportunities for the state as well to enhance our innovation tools. So we are busy standing up all these programs. We are eager to get these programs up and running, work in close collaboration with Leslie and her great team at NJRA, with, of course, the Lieutenant Governor and her great team at DCA and all across the state that she provides such leadership for, and Melanie and the team at HMFA and all of our sister and partner agencies and organizations across the state, because I think I'm as optimistic as I've ever been about the future of New Jersey and our economy as we sit here in the summer of 2021, having been through a hell of an 18 months. But we are poised to really recover stronger, fairer, more resilient, and bring Governor Murphy and Lieutenant Governor Oliver's vision to life over these next couple of years with these new tools. So I hope you have a great rest of the day. I'm sure you'll hear and learn a lot about great programs that our partner agencies are bringing forward and run so well. And I will look forward to seeing you all hopefully in person soon. Be well. Thanks.
Now that you have heard from our experts at HMFA, EDA, and NJRA, I hope you found the information helpful and that we've provided you a platform to better understand how the economic and recovery incentive programs throughout the state have been implemented to work in tandem with one another, from housing assistance and bond programs to acquisition and investment funds from our state partners. The Murphy administration is working nonstop to provide residents, local governments, and developers programs that will survive our local economies and help communities thrive throughout this crisis and beyond. But the incentives and programs are not just an economic recovery plan. They are also about lifting the burden of inequity off of our disadvantaged communities so they can thrive too. It's about creating a fairer economy that everyone can participate in and benefit from. We're grateful for engaged partners like you who recognize that you are empowered to impact and shape the way that we develop and redevelop our communities in an equitable and responsible way. We look forward to working with you in the coming years as we strive to create the strongest economy that New Jersey has seen in decades. Thank you to our panelists and to the NJRA for hosting this webinar, and thank you for your time and your attention.
Hi, everybody. I'm back. I just want to do a plug in support of the governor's housing and Economic Development Conference, which is on Wednesday, September 29th and Thursday, September 30th. And guess what? You don't have to drive all the way to Atlantic City. The conference is virtual, so you can join us like this. The plenary session is going to be similar to New Jersey Recovers, moderated by the Honorable Mayor Raz Baraka. But he is going to put us on the hot seat just a little bit and ask us questions about how the New Jersey economy is going to recover post-pandemic. So if you're interested in attending the conference, please visit www.newjerseyhousingconference.com to register. We're excited to have you. And while we won't see you in person, we'll see you virtually. Please join us. It's going to be an exciting time and great workshop sessions. Take care, everybody.